Kleven. We appreciate a full audience tonight in support of Ziwan and Jennifer, and in support of the Rogers Art Loft. The Rogers Art Loft is made possible by the Rogers Foundation, dedicated to transforming lives through art and education in Southern Nevada. My name is Lance L. Smith. I am the director of the Rogers Art Loft, and I'm going to give a brief introduction to both Ziwan and Jennifer now. Ziwan Chung received his BFA from Cornell University and his MFA from Carnegie Mellon University. Ziwan first got a taste of performing in front of a camera as a book reviewer for Reading Rainbow in the 90s television show advocating reading for children. Since then, Ziwan has continued to probe the intersections of national identity and the personal psyche, focusing on how and where they join and diverge. As an odyssey towards a home that does not exist, a rite of passage with no destination, Ziwan uses his work to search for a critical understanding of an impossible homecoming. Next, we'll talk more about Jen. Jennifer is the Grants and Gifts Manager of the Neon Museum and has been with the organization in roles ranging from volunteer to membership manager for the past 10 years. She holds a BA in Art History and a BFA in Art from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. From 2010 to 2013, she operated Kleven Contemporary, a gallery exhibiting emerging artists in downtown Las Vegas. In 2018, she was selected as the West Staff Emerging Leaders of Color for the state of Nevada and currently serves as the Nevada Museum Association's first vice president and second vice chair of the City of Las Vegas Arts Commission. She thrives to expand access to arts and culture for under-resourced communities and seeks innovative ways to bring the arts to new audiences. In her spare time, she enjoys curating exhibitions and workshops as a part of Gulch Collective, gardening, creating ceramic art, and the great outdoors, visiting museums, and making soap. I'd like to thank both Jennifer and Ziwan for being here with us tonight. And now we will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Lance, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, Jen, for being part of this whole experience.
So happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, you came very highly recommended by everyone at Rogers Art Loft, and as well as our mutual friend, Justin Favela, who I love dearly. And yeah, so let's just get right into it. So how are you doing? How's your day going? Is there like a huge heat wave in Vegas, or is it a normal heat wave?
Oh, it's actually, we are not having a heat wave like the Pacific Northwest. I think today's high was like 95 and it rained. So it's very abnormal in Las Vegas. We're all enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It's great that you're able to have this rain, and of course, everyone who's in the Pacific Northeast and also in Canada, parts of Canada, stay safe out there. So yeah, one of the things that I was really drawn to you when I was kind of going through all the different things that you do is sort of like you've always been keeping busy and you initiate all these different things. I mean, right before before we were chatting on Gmail, and you were sort of like, I was asking, oh, can you send me some images? And you're like, oh, I've got work and then I've got an activity, so I'll try to fit it in. And I was like, just take a breather, relax, it's okay. Like, we need to fit everything in. But I was like really impressed. And you've done things like Kleven Contemporary, you started your own gallery, and so we'll get into that in a bit. But before we do that, I just wanted to quickly go over you kind of being born and raised in Las Vegas and what that was like. And then I'm also curious, do you think growing up in Vegas, how that sort of shaped your views on art? And I say this because I feel like Vegas is one huge art project.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised here in Vegas. And my mom immigrated here from Taiwan when she was 12. And she met my dad, who's from Montana, at the Golden Nugget, where they both worked. So every time I'm downtown, it's like a little homecoming. And it's interesting because I don't think I mean, I didn't think about art when I was a child. It's
Yeah.
not, at least for me and in my family, it wasn't something that was active. It was a very passive thing. I had art classes in, public school and in junior high and high school, but it wasn't something that was sought out.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think it was always kind of in the periphery, but not anything that I was actively interested in until I was in college.
And then because you ended up getting a BFA at UNLV, right? University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
Yes, and I actually started as a biology major in 2003. I don't know why. I thought
Are
I
you
was
going
going
to
to
be
be
a
a
doctor?
doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure I crushed my mom's dreams, but she's pretty happy with what ended up happening. Um, so I thought I was going to be a doctor, and then I realized I was going to have to take organic chemistry, and I was like, I better just quit now. So I did film for I think 2 semesters, and part of
Okay.
my film classes I had to take an art history class. So I
Okay.
really enjoyed art history, and in taking those classes, I think I part of that degree. So I switched to the art history major. Part of that degree, I had to take 1 or 2 studio classes. And I had
Mm,
taken some photography classes in high school and just kind of got right back into it. And I was really drawn in by the community of artists that I was around and wanted to
yeah, yeah.
basically just be with them all the time. So I continued to make art in college, was able to get both degrees, and found a really, really positive community.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so it was like, slowly kind of pulling you in, first film, then art history, then
Yeah.
art. Yeah. And then so I guess, after you graduated, I know you did a few jobs here and there. I also heard through Justin that you also worked briefly at Starbucks, and so did I actually.
Oh, not briefly. I worked there for 6 years, like
But that's
the whole time I was in college.
it's hard for me to imagine. I was there just for one summer, so
And actually, I stayed at Starbucks because I also had a great community there. So I was fortunate to work across the street from the university. So
uh-huh.
everything converged. All of my art friends would
Mm,
visit me at work. I'd give them
yeah,
lots
yeah,
of free frappuccinos.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
harmonious. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so then, I know you did a lot with coffee, and you also worked at a coffee shop after you got your bachelor's, and then you ended up starting Kleven Contemporary. Can you talk a little bit about how that whole thing happened? And I'm also just amazed because to me, to imagine myself at that age starting a contemporary art gallery is sort of mind-blowing for me.
Well, yeah, when I graduated college, it was 2009. It was at the peak of the recession. So I had very little prospects for full time work. And fortunately, I was living at home with my parents. So it was okay if I wanted to start this small gallery. And working at the coffee shop I did was the anchor for an arts center. It was an old emergency room building. So they
Okay.
had all of these really small exam rooms. I'm talking small. It was like 4 feet by 7 feet, something really crazy tiny. So
That was the size of the gallery.
yes, so it was very
Okay.
small. It was very intimate.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was surrounded by lots of other small galleries and creative businesses. The space is called Emergency
Uh-huh.
Arts. So I actually
Uh-huh.
I hadn't thought about opening my own gallery. I was working with the Contemporary Arts Collective here, who Wendy Kvek was running it at that time, and just getting really involved in that and
Uh-huh.
participating on a couple different committees. And I enjoyed it. I did a lot of curating while I was in college. And the owner of the coffee shop, who was also running the Emergency Arts Building, one of the spaces became available, which was rare, and asked if I
Mm,
had been interested. And I was like, let's just do it. I really don't have anything to lose. I have a plethora of amazing artist friends to pull from. I'll get great experience, and there'll be another space in Las Vegas to show new work. And I thought that was something that we were really lacking,
mm,
infrastructure for exhibitions.
mm. And so, what did you learn in becoming a gallery director for this this space, gallery owner of the space, and also what did you learn from trying to create the thing that you wanted, creating that space for an arts community?
Um, I, there was a lot of planning, as can be imagined, a lot of timelines, a lot of writing. I did a lot
Yeah,
of all of my press releases, did all my own marketing, and working with writers to get coverage, and then also working with or trying to work with buyers to buy the work so that I could pay the artists.
yeah, yeah,
It was a lot of managing, but it was fun. I was lucky. It was something I was young. I had a lot of energy, so I was willing to put a lot into it. So running different websites, making sure everything was updated, staying in contact with the artists, and then sourcing new artists. And then at the same time, trying to be a part of that arts community of emergency arts, like trying to work with all of my all of the other business owners there to elevate the work that we were trying to show. And it was a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And sorry, one sec. Yeah, so then I guess from there, I guess that's where you learned how to write your grants, right? All that writing, and so and now I know you work at the Neon Museum as a grants writer, right? Grants gifts manager. And
Hmm.
so yeah, can you talk a bit about how that sort of transition happened? I know you started out as a volunteer tour guide and you worked your way up into the grants and gifts manager position. So, how did that sort of happen? And then also, what happened with Kleven Contemporary? Why did it stop?
So Kleven Contemporary closed in 2013 because I was beginning to work full time at the Neon Museum.
Mm.
Prior to I think summer of 2012, I was part time. So I was able to manage running the gallery and working part time. But once I started working full time, it was a little bit more difficult. Um, so that was really the reason to close. I was definitely sad to do it and still miss that opportunity in that space because I was I was very trusting of the artist to go in and do whatever they wanted. There were some really
Yeah,
fun
yeah,
installation works that happened in there, and
yeah,
was really proud to have that space and be a part of the community, the arts community. But at the museum, so it's true that my writing for the gallery helped me in my grant writing now. But when I first started at the museum, as a volunteer tour guide, I worked my way through a lot of different paths. So I was helping with film and photo shoots and tours.
mm,
And then I started doing more admin work and I was the office manager. At a certain point in time, we needed to focus more on fundraising.
right.
And really, it was just trial by fire. They were like, Jen, you're the new grant writer. Let's do this. So I learned
Yeah,
from reading other grants. I've picked up research along the way and taken many webinars and just kind of joined the community of grant writers here in Las Vegas and
oh, wow,
pass
congrats.
things around to them. It's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of fun. It's a lot of work, and there are times of high stress, and then there are times of low stress where you can take a vacation. So it works
yeah,
with my schedule well.
yeah. And so at this point, you're pretty far off from being a doctor. What do your parents sort of feel like? Not that not that it's bad or good.
No, I'm so fortunate to have the parents I have. I think they have a lot of trust in me and know that
Yeah,
I take very calculated risks, and they trust in what I'm doing, and I'm pretty certain that they're proud of where I ended up. They may
yeah,
have been a
that's
little bit nervous that I was
yeah,
graduating college with an art degree in 2009,
yeah,
but
mine too.
it worked out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they were nervous, but yeah, I mean, I think they just care for our well-being. I think
Yes.
that's how it usually comes across. Um, so yeah, so I guess with you as the grants and gifts manager, and you have it seems like the ins and out of the museum, and I'm curious, as a role as an arts administrator,
Hmm.
can you talk about you know this idea of like community advocacy and also creating a culture for museum goers, and how do we shape that with your role as the Neo Museum and also having been part of, Kleven Contemporary?
Las Vegas is a very unique city in that we didn't grow up with museums. We are one of the largest metropolitan areas without multiple freestanding museums.
Hmm.
And in a lot of ways, the museums that we do have, at least the Neon Museum and our contemporary, the Mob Museum, our
Yeah.
visitation is primarily through tourism. And so when you talk about building community, I think that in a lot of ways, the grant work that I do enables that kind of community building. So while tourists are basically our bread and butter, they come in and provide lots of admissions for us to do community work. Grants enable us to do the different types of arts engagement that we do in the community in different education programs and broaden our exhibition schedule. As an advocate, I think that it's difficult to get out to museums because they are physical spaces. So actually in this time of COVID, a lot of museums have transformed programming to be more online. And I think that that's where you can hone a community because people have greater access to something like that. So there's not mobility issues, there's not the inability to get to your space, there's not financial issues. And it is a different experience because I think many of us understand that object-based interactions are preferential to maybe something that's online, but it does open up new audiences for you. And it could also be audiences that maybe, besides not being able to get out of the house, maybe they just don't want to, And I think that that's a definitely a segment that prior to the pandemic, we were missing.
Right, right. I mean, and not only even not even during the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, like you said, it's a physical space, which also means, transportation to the museum. And, a lot of museums cost money as well, right? Like,
Mhm.
10, 15, $20 for a ticket to go into a museum. And, if you got a kid or two
Right.
kids or a partner or whatever, that's like, 15 times 4, like $60. So it adds up, and then you go there, and it's just like this kind of austere white space that a lot of times is not very welcoming. So
Right.
those are all the different things that I think of in terms of like also in terms of accessibility, which people don't tend to talk about.
Right. And I do feel fortunate at the Neon Museum. We don't have the white walls. We actually have the blue sky as our background.
Oh, really?
Because
Really?
all of our
I want to visit it. I haven't been there, but I really want to go.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a little warm right now because we are an outdoor museum, but
Yeah.
I feel like to a certain degree we've broken down those barriers of white walls. I feel
Yeah.
like the space is a lot more welcoming because it's not under the guise of a traditional museum. And there are pros and cons to that, but right now I think especially, with the pandemic going on, being outdoors, people feel a lot more comfortable. But yeah, there's no white walls, which means we don't have a lot of different exhibits, but it does mean we have the opportunity to tell greater stories about the signs that people see in front of them.
Yeah. And so what were some of the innovative ways that you use, I guess for the online programming? How did you kind of do, I guess what programming did you do?
We did multiple tours through the Boneyard, which is our predominant daily program, 45-minute tours. And actually, Justin Favello was the first tour guide at the Neon Museum and
Yeah.
came up with a lot of the structure of our tour. So
Yeah.
we produced a couple of those videos that are free and on YouTube. We did small gallery talks that went into a deeper history of certain signs. We had teacher resources that we posted online, different lesson plans that also parents could use. We also created a 360-degree virtual tour that could be accessed from the comfort of your home.
Oh, wow.
And that one's really fun. You can hover over different signs and learn a lot more. And we also have a web-based app, and that has 25 of our greatest hits on there. So you can learn from the air-conditioned comfort of your bedroom.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah. And I guess, I guess within that is, I mean, I think it's really interesting that the Neo Museum has sort of, no walls, right? Because everything's sort of outside, and that makes me want to visit even more. Um, but I guess one other question before we move on into your work, your own arts work, is sort of like, I'm curious, after having been an arts administrator for so long, what are some of the ways that museums, institutions can sort of combat the sort of, structure, the sort of white supremacy structure that's sort of built into the museums in terms of both museum goers and also people who show. I'm sure, you as a director of Kleven Contemporary, you had a certain amount of power to also in terms of like showing. And so
Mhm.
how, what are some of the things that you kind of learned along the way?
I think very much the museum should be reflective of our community, and that should be within staffing. It should be throughout your board. It should be in advisory board positions, and you should really lean into your community to see what type of programming they would find useful. I think in a lot of ways, you go into your museum world as an administrator and you think, I know what these people want. They want
Yeah.
this art program or they want to learn about this. But the
Yeah.
reality is, unless we seek their input, we're never going to truly know. So I think that's a big challenge for a lot of museums, but it's also a great opportunity to learn more.
Right. And so I guess what are some of the outreach that the Neo Museum does to talk to community?
We work with our school districts or our school
Okay.
district in town to see what types of programs would be most accessible for students. We work with other nonprofit organizations to see how they would feel or how they would like to access the museum. And we are working on diversifying our board and bringing in some outside partners to better understand how we can fill any gaps that may occur, especially within
Yeah.
the arts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, and we were talking about this earlier, but like, you also are a photographer, a ceramicist. You take care of a lot of plants.
I do.
Yeah. And so, yeah, can you talk a bit more about how, your role as an artist administrator kind of works and influences your own work as an artist, and also your own path from a photographer to ceramicist? And, we were talking about this earlier, but could you
Mhm.
talk a little bit more about it to the listeners?
Sure. Um, so I did notice a big change in the way I was thinking about my artwork after probably 4 years of working at the museum. I
Uh,
think when you leave college, or at least when I left college, I thought a lot about how work was supposed to be my interpretation. It's supposed to be
mm-hmm.
this piece that's reflective of
Yeah.
me. But
Yeah.
I think working at the museum and thinking about how other people see my work and how they were going to interact with it, that really sparked a change. So when I did my urban naturalism show in 2017 at the Winchester Community Center, I wanted to make a piece. And so this work is photography based, and then I layered whiteout correction fluid on top
Mm.
in these bird shapes. I wanted to have a participatory piece, and I think that's the next slide. I think this size of this.
I love that photograph of the trees and the whiteout. It looks like a dream sequence, where
Yeah,
all the white doves are sort of kind of these glowing things.
I wanted to kind of focus on these strange cell phone towers that were popping up all around. And for some reason, I got it in my head that they were dressed as trees for bird migration. I don't know why I thought that, but I was very resolute that these were created for birds. So I wanted to create,
Uh,
this kind of like fantasy image of what it should look like if there were,
mhm.
even more like fauna around. But
Right, right.
in the next image, I wanted to also take it a little bit further and allow people to add birds where they thought would be most appropriate. So I think this
Mm,
piece is like 5 feet by 8 feet. And I just left stickers on the wall or in this little side pouch and invited the community to affix birds where they thought was most appropriate. And they did a great
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. And then so, oh yeah, go ahead.
And so, and this was also exhibited at a community center that was next to where I grew up. So I thought that was really important for me because the space is visited by lots of children, seniors, just people that live around the neighborhood. And I think having access to art is really important in trying to, it's a free gallery. So being able to drop in while they're open, I want to say it was open whenever the center was open. So people didn't have to like rush there after work. They didn't have to schedule it in their day. They could just happen upon it. And I think that's a great way to think about how art could be in our lives. Like you just happen upon something and it gives you pause for reflection.
Right, right. And I think, I mean, that's also can be quite hard, especially in like a car culture city, right? Like Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even LA is hard to do things, car culture. And I think we typically think of like maybe New York City as a kind of city where you sort of walk and then discover things. Whereas here, you know, in a car city, it can be more difficult. So I think it's great that you're able to kind of create a space that's trying to have that sort of come across feeling.
Yeah. I really appreciate the city galleries, the county galleries. City of Henderson is doing a great job getting their arts plan off the ground. I think it's in the library district, especially, I think it's a great way for the general public to see art. I think we focus on the traditional art viewers in a lot of cases, but we really need to be bringing in the general public to see this work because they're wildly deserving of it as well.
Yeah, yeah. And then I guess you also have another
One more slide.
shift, right? As oh yeah.
This is also part of the exhibit, but whereas the first image I was adding elements to it, and this one I'm taking away. So they're all photographs, and I've scratched off pieces or cut away pieces, and I was creating actually those cell phone towers in these. Yeah.
Right. There's a certain type of erasure that happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did that similar. When I was an undergrad, I was doing these things with bananas, and then I was using bleach to sort of print bananas onto canvas, and then I used bleach to kind of bleach out, you know, bits and pieces of the printouts. But yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of like taking away of material, kind of erasure. Those are some of the ideas that kind of really pop into my mind. And then so from here, how did you kind of shift to ceramics? I know you've kind of created this kind of you know, change, and there's such difference. In my mind, there's such different mediums, right? This photography, and then sort of working with the earth and hands with ceramics.
Yeah, definitely. I think in my photography, I typically shot with a medium format camera and then just scan negatives and printed them. So there was a lot of control that I had in that, and especially with adding the birds on top of the images or cutting away certain areas or scratching them out, I had a lot of control over things. So I think in like 2016, I got into ceramics, and I think a lot about me doing ceramics was like trying to lose control. And it's funny because I lost control and then you regain it, but you regain it in maybe in a more humble way, at least for me, because I thought I was going to be like really good. It was like, I'm strong, so I'm going to really be able to do this. And you can't do it right away. You know, it's not about being strong. It's not about any of that. It's just practice. And I definitely went into it thinking, oh, I'm going to nail this. I'm going to be so good at this. And I was so bad at it. And I didn't even do the wheel for a couple years because I was traumatized. I was like, I'm not good at this. I can't do it then. And then just little by little, I decided I'm just going to jump back into it. And I think having the time to like touch the clay and understand it more through hand building, I was able to understand what it was going to do when I was on the wheel. Like what was centrifugal force going to do to it? So, actually for the past year and a half, I've been focused mostly on wheel throwing. And I got into ceramics, which is funny because what's in the background of this photo. I got into ceramics so I could have more plants. Like I was tired of buying a bunch of pots, and I was like, I want to learn how to
Yeah.
make my own. It took a very
Yeah.
long time until I could make a large one. I have lots of tiny little pots, which the next image is like the tiniest, lightest pot I've ever made. But it does have a drainage hole in the bottom, so I do consider it a planter.
Mhm.
And now with ceramics, I think about my glaze combinations and how they're going to react. But it's still about this loss of control, you know. I don't know what the glaze is going to do once it goes into the
Right.
fire until I test it.
Right.
And even when you test it, sometimes it just doesn't work out. You know, I have a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
test pieces, and I'll use the same glaze on the same clay body, and it doesn't do what I want it to do. So I think I just like the element of surprise in this work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in some ways, right? I guess photography sort of has when you take the picture, and then at least with digital it's a little different. But like when you put it into the developer, right? The image will sort of come to life, and you finally be able to see we took a photo of. But I always felt like with ceramics, there's more of like this sort of magic black box you put things in, and then something comes out, and you actually have no idea it could explode. Like you
Yeah.
were talking about, the glaze just might come out completely different, even though you do have like the tests beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in that way, like, yeah, ceramics is like this kind of strange medium in this highly digitalized world, right? I mean, I think of my own video stuff, and I'm like, I follow a tutorial and it works exactly like it does. But when I throw stuff on a wheel, it doesn't always happen that way.
Right. It definitely is about slowing down. And I think that during this time, I needed to figure out how to slow myself down. And I think ceramics has helped me do that.
Yeah. Um, and then in addition to ceramics, you're also part of this collective, the Gulk Collective. Is that
Gulch,
right?
Gulch
Gulch,
Collective. Yep.
Gulch Collective.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Actually,
can you talk a little bit about that? And yeah.
that that came about a few years after college. Um, it was originally Michaela Whitmore, Justin Favela, Crystal Ramirez, and myself. And it was, I really saw it as a way for us to stay in good communication and work on projects collaboratively. So one of the first things we did was a workshop at um, an AIDS outreach center where we made many tissue flowers and exhibited them in that space for I think as long as that space is open. After that, Michaela had moved to Macau for 6 months, but during that time, she was part of a group that was doing an art festival here, a one-night art festival at an old motel. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, you submitted the work you wanted to do, and artists were assigned different hotel rooms. So for Gulch, we did this kind of it was a performance, it was photography, we created costumes, but we were doing a photo shoot essentially in these hotel rooms, and then we layered different images in the background. And I was always sad we never ended up exhibiting that work, but it was really fun. That was in I think 2014 or 2013. And now today we're part of this new exhibit. Well, it's not new, but it's an ongoing exhibit at the Barrick Museum called Future Relics.
Mm-hmm.
And we've added Lance Smith, who most of you know, and Kindo Miller to our group. And in this exhibit, we were really fortunate to work with the Barrick Museum and Alicia Curlin because she's given us a lot of freedom to work in this
Mm-hmm.
west wing of the gallery that has many cases. And those cases used to house pre-Columbian artifacts that the
Mm-hmm.
museum had collected many years ago. And so they were taking those artifacts out and using that space, allowing artists to really conceptualize what they wanted to do. And so as a group, we thought about how could we kind of memorialize this idea or this space that once held these pre-Columbian artifacts with contemporary Latinx artists. So that's what's inside the cases. This image specifically is of Adriana Chavez, her performance that she came back to, I believe, 5 times throughout the duration of this exhibit. And this exhibit is coming down at the end of July. So everybody get out to the Barrack Museum to see it. But we've added to it over time. And it opened last August. So we've had an incredible slate. Yep. We have 3 phases of artist editions, and all of our artists are Latinx, and it's just a really beautiful exhibit. I'm really proud of it, and I really enjoy working collaboratively with Gulch. You know, we're all good friends, but it's great to be able to conceptualize themes for shows or ideas for new works with other people. I think sometimes art making can be really insular, but I'm naturally kind of extroverted, so this works really well for my own practice.
Yeah. Does Gulch have a sort of mission statement, or is it sort of ever evolving?
Gosh, we do have a mission statement, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I know it's really it's you know, creating new works or exhibitions and workshops for BIPOC and LGBTQ artists. So I know that in the future we want to expand that so that we can have more workshops and talks and safe spaces, so that we can discuss work and empower people to continue doing their artwork and give them kind of resources on how they can do that.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I guess moving forward, what are some of the plans that you have for also the NEA Museum and also your own work? You know, hopefully you'll have some, new shows coming up. But yeah, what are you sort of planning on in the future?
I'm hoping right now, in my ceramic work, anytime I can think about something to make, or I just didn't want to make the project that day at the studio, I would make 2 matching cups. And I've been doing that because I
perfectly matching.
Well, they're not perfectly matching, but attempts at matching
cups.
Attempts.
Yeah.
And I liked the idea of the slowing down to have coffee for 2 or tea for 2. So I made multiple different types of matching cups. So I'd like to continue making something like that and then present that as a show at some point in time. With Gulch, I know that we'll come back together after this long, hot summer and come up with another plan to do something fun. And at the Neon Museum, we're accepting submissions right now for our National Artists in Residence program, which will be at the end of this year.
Nice.
We just finalized a really fun teaching artist outreach at CCSD schools, and we're hoping that that'll continue in the next school year. And we've got a lot of really fun, innovative things that are coming up. And hopefully people will come out and visit us, especially when it gets cooler.
Yeah. I'll try to make it out in the near future. Like I think I've been telling everyone who I've been interviewing for this podcast, especially in the Las Vegas community, is like how sad I am that I can't make it out there for this residency. That was sort of the whole point of me applying to the residency. But times are strange in these COVID times. But yeah, so I think as we're winding down to the end of the interview, is there anything else that I missed that you want to talk about before we move on to the Q&A section?
No, I really love what the Rogers Art Loft has done, bringing in artists from out of Las Vegas to give us their perspective on what's going on here, make work maybe influenced by our community, and provide more spaces for artists and people to appreciate art and to make art a part of their lives. So a big applause for them.
Yeah, thank you, Lance. Thank you, Spencer, and everyone at Rogers Art Loft. And thank you, Jen, as well. So I guess at this point, we can open it up to the Q&A. So everyone who is listening, I believe Spencer has kind of led it out to Facebook, right? Twitch. I'm not sure where else this is going on, Zoom. if you can, put your questions to Lance, and Lance will sort of relay the questions to us. And otherwise, Jen and I, we can keep talking, you know, chatting about life and art. I'm curious, did you ever visit Taiwan?
I did. I was really
Yeah.
fortunate in 2018 in October. I went with my parents. It was the first time I'd been. We went to Taipei, and then we went on a crazy bus tour for 3 days across the east side of Taiwan. I wouldn't recommend a bus tour. It's a lot of karaoke at, at
Really?
loud decibels.
Wait, wait,
Yes.
Karaoke on the bus?
On the bus, very loud.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I don't speak Chinese, so I don't know anything that's going on. Me,
Yeah.
my mom just kept looking back, checking in on me. Oh, are you doing it? She was very concerned that I was not having a good time. Most of it was just pretty funny, but it was wild seeing people do karaoke at 5 a.m. nonstop. I'll send you videos of it because I recorded that.
Yeah, my memory of Taiwan was, we have one question, we'll get to it, but my memory of Taiwan was I went there with my mom, and my mom, she loves stinky tofu. And so we were in the
Ugh.
street market, and she could smell it from like 2 blocks away. She's like, there's stinky tofu somewhere. And then she like followed her nose, and I was just sort of following. I hadn't tried it at that point, but
Did you like it?
yeah. I don't remember it. I remember trying it, and there's tons of different varieties in China. At
Mhm.
different cities and regions have different versions. So I at the moment haven't tried it again. But I remember being like, yeah, it's fine. I like smelly, stinky foods.
Yeah. It
Like when
it's
I was in
very
Korea,
pungent.
I ate yeah, I love pungent foods. Um, all right, so we got a question from Alicia Curling. So Alicia asks, how do you manage a full-time job and creative life? Any tips? And parenthetical add-on, or if you don't want to talk about that, tell us more about the golden nugget story. I don't know what that she's referring to.
Oh, um, I don't really have any tips. I am fortunate to have some paid time off where I work, so I use that paid time off to do some creative stuff. Um, I am in the process of setting up a home studio so that when I do have some spare time and I'm home, I'm able to make new work. It's a really difficult thing to find balance because at the end of a workday, you're just really exhausted. Um, so I'm going to have to really set myself up for success and give myself like work days, which is what I did when I was going into the studio downtown. I would go in Wednesday nights and
Mm,
Saturdays. So I'll probably stick to the same schedule. Um, but that's not really good advice. um, what else? Let's see. The Golden
yeah.
Nugget story. My parents, when they were both in high school, worked at the steakhouse at the Golden Nugget. It was called Lily Langtree. And it's still there today. It's called
Hmm.
Lily's though now. And my dad was the busboy and my mom was the waitress. And they hit it off,
Okay.
got married very young, still married. And actually, I wore my golden nugget necklace that my mom gave me when I was little, just for this talk
Oh,
today.
that's sweet. Is she
Yeah.
is she in the audience? Is she listening?
I don't know. I probably should have sent them the link. They're very supportive. I will make sure to send them the podcast.
Yeah. And then I guess in my answer to Alicia, I think it's hard, right? I think everyone has their own way of doing work. Some people need a lot of time and space to kind of get into their creative mental space, and some people can sort of easily click it on and off. Also, people have different types of work, right? So I know like some painters who can just, they're working on a painting, then they go to their job and they come back and they just keep painting, right? As a sort of not mindless, but there's certain tasks that need to be done. Then some people have a sort of like roundabout way of sort of like thinking, reading books, kind of watching YouTube videos to get inspiration, and and may not have such a straightforward path. So I think a difficult way. It's difficult to answer because each person has a different way of approaching their own studio work.
Mm-hmm. Alicia, you just gave me an idea though. I'm totally gonna make some golden nugget mugs. And then we'll have tea for two
Mm.
with them.
You could also make some like castings of that golden nugget.
Yeah.
Necklace. Yeah.
We have one question
Yeah.
in the chat from
Okay.
Kim Miller. They ask, what is something you wish you could see in the Las Vegas arts community?
Mm.
Hmm. I guess I would want to see maybe more children's specific art programs. Um,
Mm.
and I say that coming from the point of view of a non-parent, so there may be a lot of them out there that I just don't know about. But having special, festivals or something where children get to interact with the arts, or just special days where they get to go and be around art and talk about it, not like in any kind of critical way, but just in like a very childlike way. What are their first impressions? I think that's great. I think actually the city of Las Vegas is in a pretty good place when it comes to the arts. I mean, we're very fortunate to have the Believer here and Black Mountain Institute. Um, so we have incredible literature, and we have the Smith Center that has Broadway performances and all of the performing arts spaces at UNLV. So there's lots of different dance recitals too. I think one of the things actually that would be great is like a comprehensive events listing. And I'm somebody that wants to print everything out. I'm still like very like
Yeah.
old school, and I like have a calendar. I want to like I want to X everything off, but I want to see what's
Mhm.
going on each day because I know there's so much I'm missing. Um, because we really do a pretty good job programming the arts, but it's almost like if you're not clued into it, how are you going to find out about it? I think that's one of those struggles. I think marketing is always a struggle for the arts, getting new audiences and also trying to compete with all the other fun things happening in Las Vegas. Um, but Las Vegas is really growing rapidly within the arts. We've got Area 15 and Meow Wolf, and just lots of new fun things that are happening. There's the Seven Magic Mountains, but yeah, I guess some sort of comprehensive list would be nice of things going on.
Yeah. That's where you can come in and make an app for that and make all your money.
I just told
I
you I
feel like every
print
city
paper
I've been.
things out. I can't make an app.
Every city I've been to has like they're struggling to figure this out. I think it's not
Yeah.
just a Las Vegas thing because like I was in Berlin and like there's like 3 different apps. I was in LA. There's also 3 different apps for like figuring out what's going on, what's opening, and then like yeah, no one quite knows how to at the moment organize all of it.
And I guess that I mean, it's kind of maybe it's a quality problem because there's so many things going on. Um, and unfortunately, I know that there are calendars and newsletters. I just probably am not subscribed to all of them, and even if I was, maybe I missed something. But yeah, the whole marketing behind everything that's going on. And you know what? I'm kind of tired of people thinking that Las Vegas has no culture because there's always something to do. There's always some sort of, theater performance or something going on at a library, an art exhibit, a workshop. You know, I just think people
Yeah.
need to seek it out, and I know that this is something people talk about a lot in our community. Like, how do we find out about these things? But it's out there. I mean, I'm complaining about it right now, but I know that I can Google everything too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think that's sort of the difficulty, right? I think the more choices we have, the more confused we get, right? I think there's that whole thing with like if you offer people too many cereals and they'll just pick like one or two that they're comfortable with. But yeah,
And I have a
Someone
real
asked,
problem
oh
with
yeah,
that.
go ahead.
I have a real problem with making choices.
Yeah.
Cereals were very difficult. I like to go to a restaurant that has like 5 items on the menu because I don't want to sort through everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Del Taco.
Exactly.
Yeah. When I was in Vegas, that's where Justin told me like you have to go there. So yeah, I went
Oh,
there once. Anonymous attendee asks, "What is grants writing at the new Neon Museum all about?"
so more oftentimes than not, I'm looking for grants to fund special programs. So it can be like our artist in residence program. We have various educational programs and youth programs. Um, but typically it is program specific. And I hope that answers your question. But, I do a variety of research. So, I mean, staying on top of all of these new grants coming out too with the American Rescue Plan has been a lot of fun. Just like it was with the CARES Act when that came out, allocating a lot more funds to the NEH, the NEA, and the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So I'm always staying on top of those deadlines and reading a lot of fine print, taking a lot of webinars. I have a lot of spreadsheets and I love color coding them. But yeah, most of the time it's program specific. We have a scholar in residence as well, and we do a variety of public programs throughout the year, different panel discussions and lectures.
All right. Anonymous says thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's they're interesting questions only because like I think if you're not in the arts, like I feel like a lot of times the arts is this sort of like weird black box. Like what is a curator? What does an artist
Mm-hmm.
do? What does an art administrator do? And it's like there's like these like fancy titles that don't seem to have a clear answer in normal daily life, right?
Yeah. I mean, administrator as a term, I feel like is a catch-all. Like
Yeah.
I do perform a variety of functions for the museum. One of my favorite parts about being in the place I am at the museum is mentorship and working with my younger coworkers or people who are new to the museum field and helping them navigate because really the fact of the matter is Las Vegas is going to grow. Museums are going to grow here and we're going to need a lot of infrastructure and that means that there's going to be a lot of cultural workers here. And I'm hopeful that the city becomes really a hub of museum workers. And it's a beautiful place to be. And working with the people that work at other museums is really joyous.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think every city is kind of going through this sort of growth as people move into these cities, and I think the other issues are like cities figuring out how to kind of grow with the influx of all these people, and so I'm curious, yeah, how Vegas kind of changes. Vegas is also this weird place in the sense that the outside world always views it as like this temporary place where people go there just for the bachelor parties, a weekend out, and then there's also like the actual communities that actually live there, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
those things sort of kind of feed off each other in a sort of interesting back and forth feedback.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Are there any other questions, Lance?
No more questions currently.
Okay, well, here's your last chance. Jennifer, is anything else you want to add? We can wait a little bit, but
It's so fun to be a part of just talking about art and culture and museums. I feel like I should give myself more space with people to just talk. I think a lot of times I'm thinking about planning for a project
Mhm.
or a program, but sometimes it's fun to just talk about how we work and how we exist and who we serve and why we do it. And thinking about, you know, those kinds of things always makes me very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like some of my favorite sort of ways to learn about, different artists and creative is sort of like reading their interviews, right? Reading their discussions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's sort of like they let their guard down sometimes, not always,
Mhm.
but they let their guard down, and then you kind of see like a small nugget of who they are as a human being, which may not be like this wonderful, awe-inspiring sort of quote, or like, but like it kind of reveals a little bit about their creative process. Like, I mean, I'm thinking back to Alicia's question in terms of like how you juggle all these different things, and I'm thinking like, one of the things that I really love about like Felix Gonzalez Torres, who's an artist, one of the limits he set himself is like all the artwork that he makes has to fit underneath his bed, right? And sort of like when you learn about that and you think about it, like why would one have that? And then you think about maybe the restrictions that one might have to then force yourself to have that restriction that the work has to fit underneath the bed, and then extrapolating that and thinking like, how does one work in that way? How does one sort of find a creative environment within those restrictions, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so I guess if there's no other questions, I mean, Jen, thank you again so much for being part of this. Again, thank you everyone at the Rogers Art Loft. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you online and find more about your work and all the wonderful things that you're doing?
I think if you search Kleven Contemporary, I still have an old Tumblr online. So
When I
feel
went
like
there, I couldn't access it when I went,
oh, you
but I'll
couldn't?
double check.
Let's see if I can get that start or up and
It's
running
right. If
again. It's a great archive.
I'll post I'll post the link if I can find it again. But yeah, okay.
And I'm on Instagram at JenClev00. My ceramics can be found at Jenk Ceramics, JENK Ceramics, on Instagram. And just look for me in the papers, I guess.
Yeah, and everyone go visit the Neon Museum, check it out. Can people, is the Neon Museum open for tours, or is it sort of closed for COVID?
We're open for everything. We are
Okay,
open 3 p.m. until 11 p.m. daily, and likely be
11
expanding those
p.m.
11 p.m. It's the Neon Museum. Um, we'll be open. It's likely we're going to open earlier in the fall when it cools down a little bit.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so yeah, everyone wear your mask, be safe, 6 feet distance. Luckily, like you said, Jen, that it's outdoors, so go visit. And if you're an artist, go apply to their artist in residence. It's a wonderful program. I think a great opportunity to also work with the different people at the New Museum, including Jen, and then also make some work. And thank you everyone for being part of this. So take care and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.